Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Astro-Tarot Deep Dive. I'm here with Susheela, and we're going to dive deeply into the month of July that has a lot of aspects. Um, I think that it's really a month that, as Susheela and I were somewhat talking about before, takes us from one portal to another, from
Mhm.
one reality to another. And how we face this new reality will tell us a lot about where we're at and how to, the work that's there to be able
Mhm.
to catch up, if you will, to where all of this is really headed towards.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm using 2 decks this time, both by Chris Ann. They're exactly the same size, so I almost said it was easy to shuffle, but it wasn't all that easy to shuffle. But anyway, um, I just felt like we needed more options to be able
Mhm.
to tell the story of this month. And as I said to you offline or off the recording, um, last month we talked a lot about the hermit being an energy that carried through for the entire month. And this month there's a different card, and it's the card that was at the bottom of the deck. And it's very interesting because after we tell the whole story of the month, we kind of sandwich it again with something very interesting.
Mm.
And the it is like a little dance step. We are maybe starts and stops, acceleration, starts and stops, acceleration, sidestepping. And it is really the feeling of going through a portal. So last month we did talk about things being like so weird and different. Everything you thought you knew is just randomly change. Well, I shouldn't say random, but it feels so random. Like it's like, where did this come from?
Right.
To this month, there's maybe a little more follow through on that. And we had the hermit being that feeling of pulling back our energy, like instead of being reclusive, pulling back to us and being introspective, like here or here, you know,
Mhm.
or here. That kind of feeling and connecting more to our higher self or our purpose or whatever. And this month, should I tell you what the card was at the bottom of the deck?
Yeah, let's start there.
Okay. It's the Fool. It's the zero. It is the reset button. It is the deep dive for sure. And we've got that, the flower, the flower of life, and she's standing at a precipice and she's holding on, and she's holding that crystal, and she is sort of waiting to have the courage to let go and dive in.
Mhm. So, for anyone who may be new, Susheela does not share the cards that she pulls with me. So, we agree on the astrological dates, but she pulls cards that I don't get to see until we're actually recording, which to me
Mhm.
is really exciting. So, when I saw that, I was like, that makes so much sense because all I've seen are the dates of the month
Yeah.
and the interpretation that I have of them. So that is very appropriate and interesting, um, because we have a few planets now retrograde, right?
Mhm.
That that Fool card, that zero card, we get to integrate that zero energy for a few months. So it's not like a thing that happens overnight or from one week to the next. There's an integration period that I think really is between now and I would say, to be safe, spring of 2025, but if we want to pull it back, January of 2025. So there's this period of integration that I think begins now. And I'll dive right in because there's a lot to say there. So, speaking of the retrogrades, on July 2nd, Neptune begins its retrograde phase, and remains retrograde till December 7th. So, we have to keep in mind that Neptune is stationing retrograde at 29 degrees Pisces. That is the last degree of the entire zodiac. This plays a significant role in terms of how the rest of the month goes, because there are a lot of planets that hit that Neptune in Pisces at that degree. And so throughout the month, the planets touching the Neptune in Pisces represent, this is what's changing, this is what's ending, this is what you no longer want to hold on to, this has to go. Like,
Mhm.
there is this energy of release. On that same day, it's a busy day, and mind you, that means that it's a busy week, right? We have that Mercury in Cancer trine Neptune in Pisces. So here we have Mercury, the planet of communication and cognitive thought, in a very intuitive psychic sign like Cancer. And so Mercury in Cancer is about the thinking about, the communicating to self and to others. This is what home feels like to me. This is what nurturance feels like to me. But the trine to Neptune in Pisces is this really almost seamless understanding and accepting. In order for me to gain that vision, Mercury, of what I want to nurture and what I want my life to be like, to feel like, I have to stop nurturing other things. The stopping to nurture other things is that Neptune in Pisces. And then immediately afterwards, Mercury enters the sign of Leo. So here we go from this Mercury in Cancer, which can be rather introspective. Perhaps this may have aligned with a lot of dreams for people, intuitive downloads, and immediately enters Mercury in Leo, which is, I'm going to now create this reality. And this, to me, Mercury in Leo feels like a lot of visualization type of thing, like hypnosis, um,
Mhm.
you know, uh, any meditation, any guided type of meditation that takes you into creating. And then we have Venus in Cancer create a trine to Saturn now retrograde in Pisces. So this Venus in Cancer is, what is my relationship to what feels comfortable, to what feels known? And the trine to Saturn in Pisces, Saturn retrograde in Pisces, is I am reconsidering my commitment, Saturn, reconsidering Saturn retrograde, commitment Saturn to certain relationships, Venus, that feel or have felt safe in the past, but perhaps that's not the case anymore. So there's
Mm.
a lot there.
Yeah. Well, I have four really interesting cards for those same four aspects. So you remember the card at the bottom of the deck, the Fool, 0. That is the first card of the major arcana, which are the archetypal, broad scope, hierarching energies that we go through. The World is the last card, and it's a 21, and it's balance and opportunity, and as far as you can dream, as far as you can imagine, as far as you can expand, explore. And it's not even physically, it's into those realms that maybe you couldn't access before, maybe you didn't dare go there, figuratively or literally. And
Mm,
so it's this opportunity to envision again, where do I want to go, what do I want to do, can I really do that? And even though you can feel resistance, I think there's, based on our old way of thinking, a feeling of resistance to a lot of things. That resistance is only because we were accustomed to doing them in a certain way. As soon as you let that go, everything flows again. So it's not a question of like follow the path of least resistance. No, the resistance is there to let you know that you are holding on to something,
mm,
not to not do that.
mhm, mhm,
N- In in conjunction with that, we have this Wheel of Fortune card. So it's really funny that these two show up together. It's very fortunate. It's um again, giving weight to the fact that before you couldn't do this. For some reason now you can do this. We
mhm,
can't we've been chipping away and chipping away, and things have been chipping away at us as well, that we're not the same. Nothing is the same. So all of a sudden now there's a different awareness, and it's probably not like an epiphany. It's probably like something feeling really subtle of like, huh, a year ago I used to feel this when this happened, or I used to want this and now I don't. Or now the thing that I really wanted all of a sudden has blossomed into something else. Like, so there's change over time that is extremely fortunate, and it doesn't resemble what it used to resemble because the information is now different somehow. And yet it's the same. It's
Right.
like it's come to life. It's been colorized. It's like going from 8-bit to 16-bit to, whatever, something, spectacular. The next card we have, so the first three were all from the Curious Creatures deck, is the Knight of Cups. And traditionally speaking, this is an offer, and an offer to warm your heart, an offer of love, or something that feels nurturing and loving and helpful in sustaining your desires and your wishes, not just on a material level, not just on an intellectual level or a providing level. It feeds your soul, this kind of an offer. And in conjunction with that, we have the Queen of Cups. We have these two minors, both in cups, both about emotions, both about feelings, intuition, and what feeds your soul and your heart. Having all of these together like this, it's really like you may not have felt that you were really headed on your path of destiny. You got
Mhm.
derailed, everything changed, everything got thrown off, but there's this feeling now of like, huh, that's not how I thought it was going to look.
Right.
But now these things are showing up in this way, only to realize that this mess, this like ball of yarn that was all completely mangled, actually is making sense as
Mhm.
we're coming out of it. And I think also, we mentioned that the whole month feels like this dance, like a couple of steps forward, a couple of steps back. And so that energy is there, but it's all really good. This queen happened to be our card of the week last week as well. And it's a water sign queen. So it's Cancerian energy, Pisces energy. It's it's like the empress of the minor arcana.
Mm.
So it's not so much about creation and receptivity like the empress, but it's more about the day-to-day nurturing and receptivity, and how we give to things. What do we give to in order to receive? So there's this dropping of resistance, like this day. I mean, we are recording this on July 2nd, and so it is really the beginning of like, oh, just drop it, drop it, drop it, drop it, drop it, because
Right.
really good stuff is there percolating.
Right. And I think that that dropping is a theme throughout the entire month.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the reasons I say that is that on July 3rd, we have Mercury newly entered in Leo, creating an opposition to Pluto retrograde in Aquarius. So, one of the things that we have to keep in mind, and for anyone who, studies astrology, especially, you have to take into account the patterns that multiple planets have, especially within weeks of one another. And one of the things that we're going to see, obviously, is that any planet that leaves the sign of Cancer is going to create a final trine to that Neptune in Pisces, and immediately newly entered into Leo is going to create an opposition to that Pluto retrograde in Aquarius. So here we have this Mercury in Leo, which on the one hand is very creative expression. So, in a very practical interpretation of Mercury in opposition to Leo, in its highest expression, is what you have to say is pretty powerful. Mercury in Leo is about speaking, Mercury from the heart, Leo. The opposition to Pluto in Aquarius can be you seeing yourself as a presence that is empowered, or speaking to uh, people in power, right? In
Mhm.
whatever way that you consider that. Or speaking powerful words to the masses, because we're talking about Aquarius energy as well. So there is something here about the expression of who you are, whether you have a large platform or not. I think we're stepping away from these large platforms and the understanding that if we each have a unique point of view, then we each have something to share that can, you know, that can help the collective.
Mm.
So Mercury in Leo can also be you having these really big creative ideas that you really love, that get you very excited, that can potentially shine a light on you, your skills, your knowledge, and coming to that opposition of Pluto and Aquarius and feeling disempowered by what that might mean. What happens if I do this? How will people respond? Am I good enough? So in the lower expression, that Pluto energy really can bring you face to face with a lot of insecurities. That's actually a good thing, because it's not for us to identify with the insecurities. It's just to be made aware that they're there.
Mm. Well, I have an interesting one for that. I have the High Priestess in the Major Arcana also, and that's number 2. So we have lots of ones and twos this month. And this is really about your intuition traditionally. In the energy at this time, I think it's more about, you know, the information that we can access is different than before. We couldn't access information. So whether that's us tuning into the big idea, knowing how to articulate the big idea, all of a sudden we're able to express that big idea wherever that comes from. Like, where do ideas come from? You know, we see something, there's input, but then there's some other very intangible, otherworldly aspect to, oh, I just had an idea. Wouldn't that be great? It can also be things like downloads and your psychic ability and all of those things and your dream time.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge there is all of that sounds very ethereal. Like, how do we make that practical? How do we translate? And so that might be that retrograde aspect and the opposition aspect, because that intuition feels like, woo, like all this opened up, but I don't know. It's all great in my mind and I can express it, but is that too woo woo for people? Is that, I want to get a business development loan. Like, how do I translate that
Right.
into like a spreadsheet? And that's the part that might be challenging with that.
Right. Right. That's that's a really great segue into July 5th, in which we have the new moon in Cancer. So that new moon in Cancer, one of the major aspects of that new moon in Cancer is Mars in Taurus sextile, Saturn now retrograde in Pisces. And I'll touch on that in a second, but I think one of the more important things to remember about this new moon in Cancer is that it's taking place between two full moons in Capricorn. One that took place on January 21st, and the second one taking place on July 21st. So here we have these two full moons in Capricorn that are the sign directly opposite of Cancer. And Cancer being a new moon, that energy is, this is where I want to plant seeds. This is what I want to nurture. This is what I want to grow. This is how I want to raise my family. This is where I want to raise my family. This is how I want to create family, whatever that means to you. And those two full moons are saying, okay, great. But in order for you to plant that seed from a genuine place that is truly you now, a lot of these structures and foundations that you've built a previous reality on, a lot of that is going to have to go, right? And so what we keep from there in true Capricorn energy is the wisdom and the mastery of other things learned. And
Mm.
that's what we take on with us. That Mars in Taurus, sextile Saturn retrograde in Pisces is Mars in Taurus, slow and steady. Mars in Taurus, I'm moving in the direction of what I value and not aimlessly moving in the direction of anything, right?
Mhm.
The sextile is an invitation to Saturn retrograde saying, Okay, so this is something new that I'm building, that I'm creating, that I'm sustaining. The retrograde is I'm learning how to do this. And in Pisces, it's the devotion to the slow and steady movement,
Mm.
right? So there is a patience there that doesn't come from a place of, well, I guess I have to wait. It's more of a believe it to be true. Believe that vision to be already. And all you have to do is move slowly and steadily every single day, not through just commitment, but devotion. And those are very different things.
Hmm. Well, I mean, if I may ask too, the fact that we have two full moons in Capricorn side by side,
Mhm.
that's a bit of an unusual thing,
Yes.
is it not? Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
mean, you
So
probably
that,
don't know how many, what the actual stats are of the rarity of that, but it's not common that we have like 1 month with a full moon in a sign and the following month the exact same thing, except all the other planets are doing something different that adds flavor flavor to it.
absolutely. It's
Yeah.
not common. And the first full moon in Capricorn was at 1 degree. The second one is at 29 degrees. So here we have the entire, all of the degrees of that one sign being covered in a month. And keeping in mind that later on in the year, we're still going to have one last retrograde of Pluto into the sign of Capricorn at 29 degrees. Capricorn right now is representing the old way of doing life. And there's something really fundamental with two full moons that represents deeply rooted things that make us feel safe
Yeah.
that are saying, nope, not
Yeah.
anymore.
Not anymore. And the deeply rooted things that make us feel safe makes me think of something I always say, that it's not always your comfort zone. We call it the comfort zone, but more accurately, I think it's the familiar zone.
Yes.
And it
Mm-hmm.
and it feels uncomfortable to change it,
Mm-hmm.
but that's where the magic happens. And so we are now more and more and more compelled to do that. So for that new moon, we have the Ace of Wands. So you
Mm.
remember, we just went through the High Priestess, which is a 2 in the major, the intuition. And here we have the Ace of Wands. Again, third eye connection, the beginning of the spark of something. It's like something passionate, something interesting, something I can do this. Where does it come from? I don't know. It's cumulative. It's like all the things. It's like when you're making a, I don't know, like a stew or a sauce or something. You put all
Right.
the things in. If you taste it at that time, it's not ready yet. It needs to stew. It needs to, the flavors need to go. And so it's this like, how does it happen? Where does the innovation come from? Where did the concept come from? That's that new moon. It's amazing. Then the other aspect, when you're talking about this like slow and steady and do all the pieces, we've got the Eight of Pentacles, and it's all the little mundane things, all the tasks. Sometimes what happens, we're so used to doing something a certain way, whether it's like how we work on our computer, a job that we do, and we do everything the same all the time. And something shifts and something changes, and it's like, well, if I was learning this new right now, there's probably new ways of doing it, or there's new shortcuts, or they've added some other feature that I haven't used. I mean, we've experienced that. I'm sure everybody's experienced that. Your software gets upgraded and you start looking for your old, oh, well, where's that in the menu or whatever, and you just go back to doing your base thing. If you actually did the tutorial for the new version, you're like, "Ooh, there's this. Oh, it has that." So it's kind of like relearning your basics,
Mm-hmm.
relearning the thing that you are supposedly so good at, relearn how you process information, relearn how you respond to people, relearn what you perceive. And so with those two together on the same day, and it's going to travel again for months and months and months, there's a lot of this like new ways of the old information and then reconfiguring it, relearning it. Oh, new information, new idea, new way of looking at the old idea. It's like it's been spoofed so many times, like the original Matrix, when they first did that shot where they did like the slow-mo and the 360 or whatever. But it feels like we have that capability
Yeah.
almost, intellectually, that we've always been seeing it this way. And now
Mhm.
we can watch it from the audience's perspective. But now we can watch from the audience's perspective with 3D glasses in a 360 VR room. Like
Right.
we I mean, it might not be that spectacular, but it feels like we are beginning to access that. And however that happens, oh, there's like a new awareness. Oh, maybe I didn't need that thing. Oh, maybe, I it's this ripple effect of new ideas and reframing.
I think that so much of what we're being invited to experiment with in July and for the next couple of months is really getting to know our our power of manifestation, our power, the power that we have with our words, with our thoughts, um, and to understand that as a technology,
Mm,
right? Anytime that we talk about Pluto in Aquarius, again, yes, it does represent AI, the robots, all of the things that we're going to see that we have no idea and we haven't seen yet. But to me, this is a transformation, Pluto, that can come with the technology of the mind,
yeah.
accessing parts of the mind, really making the mind work for us. That's big. And that's something that I think takes persistence in the very Mars and Taurus way. So on July 8th, we have that Venus in Cancer sextile Uranus and Taurus, and we have Mercury in Leo. I love that. Sextile Jupiter and Gemini. Okay, so here we have Venus in Cancer. We are contemplating and looking at the relationship that we have with the familiar. The sextile, and it's kind of nice that it's a sextile. Uranus and Taurus is the invitation of what if it looked differently? What if you've been living somewhere forever and you just imagine that you live somewhere else? Because somewhere deep down inside, that's a desire that you have. It doesn't mean you have to buy your plane ticket right now and sell your stuff right now. But what if you stepped out of the familiar in your mind at the very least, or talked about it with a friend and imagined the best case scenario in something that is out of the familiar? That is a Venus in Cancer sextile Uranus and Taurus. And a more practical interpretation of this is a great time to meet with friends to talk about those things, right? To talk about the best case scenario, to really have conversations around dreaming big, especially because Mercury and Leo sextile Jupiter and Gemini is Mercury and Leo. This is what I'm imagining. This is what I love. This would be great, right? Leo with the drama,
Yeah.
all the drama, please. Let's do all of it. The sextile Jupiter and Gemini is yes, bigger, more, you can do it. This is a lovely day, and it creates energy for the rest of the week where you can use this to your advantage for creativity, for brainstorming, collaborating. It's fun energy that I think invites you to give yourself permission to go there, to dream that.
Very interesting. So I've got a minor and a major, and both of them are the same number.
Wow.
7 and 7. So I have a 7 of Swords and the Chariot. And so the 7 of Swords often, I think, gets a bad rap in that people think it's, about deceit and, lying and cheating and stealing and whatnot. If you notice, the figure is being illuminated and sort of collecting these, being stealthy and getting over the hump. And
Mhm.
then we've got the Chariot, which is the balance of dark and light, you're not really in control of the speed at which you travel. You can only navigate. I mean, that's most of our lives, really, but it's about divine timing. So we've got this divine timing, big picture stuff, things moving forward, traveling, whether that's physically or in other realms, movement
Mhm.
anyway, movement towards a goal, and things coming to light, things things that were hidden, things that were kept from us, information that we didn't have access to. And so those two things together, also when you add them up, 7 and 7 is a 14, which is a 5, which is about major change. And so the two cards are about change and movement, and being able to access things that we did not have the capacity for or the availability to, or whatever. I don't know which preposition to use. We didn't have access to it at the time, but now we do. And then together, it's like, it's you might as well add another 7 in there, because it's really just like exponential
Mm.
in what you can manifest, how you can do that. If you didn't have access to information before and you were able to do all these things, imagine what you can do now. So there's this progression of imagining and traveling and sort of casting your net far into the future and sort of see what it draws up, or what it stirs up, or what it can bring to you, or how it draws you to it. It's
Mhm.
it feels very, um I know there's a practical level to all of this because we're living in a
Yes.
3D world, but there's this other
Yes.
stuff.
Yes.
There's
I'm
this other
finding
stuff.
I'm finding myself I can feel the resistance in my body to try and explain this in a practical way, because the practicality of a lot of astrological aspects unfolds very naturally on the day to day for all of us, right?
Mhm.
But what we want to take advantage of is the understanding of a higher expression of all of this, because it is at our disposal, and we are at a time in which this is opening up for us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's a time that, I mean, nobody living on Earth at this moment has experienced what we're experiencing now.
Mhm. Mhm.
It it just has not existed previously. And
Right.
so it doesn't matter how much you know, how much you have, how little you know, how little you have, it is all new.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That takes us to July 10th, in which we have the Sun in Cancer trine Saturn retrograde in Pisces. So here we have the Sun in Cancer, which is how we show up um, to our life in a nurturing way, in a way that feels like home to us. There is a lot of redefining of what home means to us right now. And I think we see that right in the way that families are being formed and friends that become family and the types of communities that are being formed. The whole definition and notion of a family in a traditional way is getting obliterated. That's done. So this Sun in Cancer is how we show up for that. The trine to Saturn retrograde in Pisces is, if you haven't started already creating a new sense of family and home and safety, emotional safety, especially for yourself, the Saturn retrograde cycle between now and the end of 2024 is the time to do that. But
Mhm.
again, Saturn in Pisces represents a sense of devotion. This isn't, and devotion comes from something that you feel soul led to. And that matters.
Mhm.
Matters that we feel, oh, I get to devote myself to the creation of my life in every aspect of it. And it feels rather easeful, to be quite honest.
Yeah, well, we had the Ace of Wands earlier, and now we have the Two of Wands. It's typically depicted by somebody in a house
Mm.
looking outside, either through a window or a door. And it is okay. So, wands are all about creative. inspirational, manifesting kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But the practical part is the progression of wands is like first you have the idea, then you have to execute the plan. So
Mhm.
how do you execute the plan? There's practical steps, but it still involves a lot of envisioning.
Mhm.
And so that envisioning is you, okay, the first part can feel really woo woo, right? It's like, I have this great idea. It's like, oh, no, no. When you take the next step, it becomes more and more practical as you go, right?
Mhm.
It's like, well, that's really great. What would be the next? What would be the first next thing to do in this? How do I, if I want to take that idea and make it a reality, w- what does that look like? What does that even look like? Who do I talk to? What do I look up? Like, how do I even Google it? You
Right.
know, it's like beginning to formulate that kind of a connection from the creative part to the result part. So we're
Mhm.
slightly past that initial creative part, but it is all about envisioning, re-envisioning. As you get more information, as you move further along that path, you're going to re-envision and re-envision and re-envision and re-envision. Oh, I thought the robot I'm building is going to have 6 sets of arms. That's not going to work exactly. So I'm going to do this instead. And it's okay. It's like we're only at level 2 at
Mhm.
that point. And we've got, 15, 20 steps in the process. So, yeah.
That's such a great point. Because I think there can be a tendency to want to see things very quickly, right? Um, and not forgetting that if again, if you devote yourself to a practice of visualization, right? Or really having a different connection with the universe,
Mhm.
you will inevitably be led to the next step. You will inevitably be led to the next thing that needs to be done in a way where you don't even realize it. But there has to be an open channel between you and that higher knowledge.
Well, it reminds me, when you say that, it reminds me of those books. When I was a kid, we had these little paperback books, and they were like mysteries.
Mm,
And you would get to a point, and it would say, now, there's a door. Do you open the door or do you go down the hall? And then if you go down the hall, you turn to page whatever. It's
yeah,
That's what we're living in real life. And I think like those books were a reflection of how we actually function in real life, instead of just reading the book from beginning to end as if it's all written.
right.
Eventually you get to an ending, which could be a variety of different endings in a certain amount of time, but
Mhm.
essentially that's what we're doing. We get to keep going, oh, option A, option B, option A, option B, option, oh, C, D, E, F, oh, wait a minute. And then we go back, oh, I'm going to go back and change this. If I change this, then I get other options. It's like that little bit of reconfiguring as we go.
Right, right. That then takes us to July 11th, which is Venus in Cancer trine Neptune in Pisces. And so again, here we have yet another personal planet, Venus, coming to its end of its transit to Cancer, which is at 29 degrees, trine Neptune in Pisces at 29 degrees. The relationship Venus with the familiar Cancer, the trine to Neptune in Pisces, is that very gentle nudge from the universe saying, this is coming to an end. So goodbye. Right? And the Neptune and Pisces energy is so unconditionally loving and reminding you that you are unconditionally love held, sustained, and guided. And that is it is kind of saying goodbye to my relationship to the familiar. Immediately, Venus moves into Leo. And so this is really important because we have to think back to last year in 2023 between July, August, September, where we had that gnarly Venus retrograde in Leo that changed so much for so many people in different ways, more than love, more than relationships. There was a big shift that happened for people there. So when you think about that, when you think about July, August, September of 2023, what happened? You think about July 2024, Venus in Cancer, trine Neptune in Pisces, saying goodbye to that relationship with the familiar, and then Venus enters Leo.
Mm.
Venus is coming back to the place where she was last year, and she was, in a battle. And so, and Venus remains Leo till August 4th. Here is an opportunity for us to exercise and practice the things that we thought we couldn't, to relate in the way that we thought we couldn't, to create in the way we thought we couldn't, to love in the way we thought we couldn't, to love and see ourselves in the way that we thought we couldn't. But it
Yeah,
requires leaving the familiar.
yeah, that Venus in Leo, to me, it could have been just a big headline of
Yes.
say goodbye to the ego. Say
Right.
goodbye to the ego. The ego is getting kicked to the curb. The harder you want to hold on to that ego identity, the harder you're going to be pummeled,
Mm-hmm.
pummeled, 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 pummeled.
Mm-hmm.
And the harder some people were getting pummeled, the harder they held on to it.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're in this other space. And so the two cards that I have are both from the light seers in this one. We've got the star, and we
Mm-hmm.
got another seven. We have another seven. And I mean, this is a 17 also. There's a 1 and a 7. So we're filled with sevens here. So this energy of the star, okay, it's about optimism. It's about connecting to something higher than yourself. In a very practical term, it can be being in the spotlight, or, having some kind of fame or infamy or whatever. But really on a personal soul level, day-to-day level, if you notice, she's out there at night. It's a little windy, it's a little cool. She's holding on to this string that's connected to source. That same string comes all the way down and is connected to the ground. And she's sitting on the ground. She's anchored, almost like she's, holding a kite or something. And
Mm-hmm.
it is that optimism, but not letting it run away with us, not thinking too lofty, but knowing that we are connected to that, and like that there is that possibility, staying grounded at the same time, also being allowed to feel that there's so much we still don't know, and we're never going to know. We're just never going to know that. And
Mm-hmm.
we go back to that Fool card of like jumping in, taking, having a leap of faith that if you keep doing this and you keep slowly applying yourself, the best possible outcome happens. Which then brings me to the 7 of Pentacles, which is, guess what? We did grow a lot. You go back to last year at this time, you're like, oh, the effort I put in has actually produced something. It has actually changed things. I actually have a better awareness. Things are, if you notice here, he's growing this plant. There is proof above the ground, but there's a lot more under the surface than meets the eye. So, you might feel like nothing's happening, or everything's going so slow, or progress is like torture. Just go back to that time and really see how far you've come.
Right.
And
Right.
then that potential then opens up for where are you going to be next year at this time? Where are you going to be 5 years at this time? Instead of that yearning and longing thing, knowing that you are progressing. So it goes back to the Chariot, another 7, everything in divine timing if you let it.
Right. Right. Exactly. This is interesting because the next day, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, any planet that moves into Leo, one of the first things it's going to do is create an opposition to that Pluto retrograde in Aquarius. And that's exactly what Venus does on July 12th. So a very the one of the most common interpretations of Venus opposition in Leo is, like a power struggle. Okay, so yeah, I can see that Venus in Leo, opposition to Pluto in Aquarius, power struggle perhaps in certain relationships. But here's just going along the theme with what we've been talking about this whole time, this to me feels like Venus and Leo, the relationship to that creativity. And by creativity, I want to just emphasize that it's not, it's just the life that we're creating.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to look a certain way. You don't have to be an artist, a musician, a content creator. It's the act of creating your life. So the relationship to Leo, to my creativity, to my heart's desire, in opposition, face to face with Pluto and Aquarius, it can feel overpowering. Little old me, these are my dreams, and when I think about them, they feel overpowering. It can That's a different way of interpreting this power struggle. But you have to ask yourself, who is this power struggle with, right? Because a different interpretation, a much more empowered interpretation of this is you coming face to face with this might feel intimidating, which there's nothing wrong with, but then choosing to come back to the self anyway.
Mm.
I think that this week, that week of the 8th, has the potential to, I think, for several people, bring opportunities. Because we have at the beginning of the week that connection between Venus and Uranus, which is like expect the unexpected. And as Venus enters Leo and opposes Pluto, let's say you do get an opportunity out of nowhere sometime that week. You're like, this is what I wanted. Oh, but this is what it requires. And I'm finally here. So be very mindful of that, because whatever is manifesting and unfolding for you at this time is timely. It's meant to be, and you're ready for it. That opposition to Pluto doesn't have to be disempowering.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, we have a second Wheel of Fortune showing up.
Mm. Wow.
And I love the fact, if we go back to the very first, July 2nd, we had it in this deck. Okay,
Mhm.
kind of different vibe, right? She's
Yeah.
sitting there, she's grooving, it's cool, it's fun, everything's fun, happy go lucky. In this one, it has a different air to it. She's standing in this tree pose, balancing the light and the dark, standing quite nicely, although precariously, on these coins that are, or these wheels that are floating out there in space. So even with the appearance of the Wheel of Fortune, it's progressed in some way, right? So it's this fortunate circumstance. But, when you're saying, oh, like, am I able to do this? Like,
Mhm.
is this the Wheel of Fortune showing up can make people feel, well, my whole life, I never got it. So
Mm,
can I trust this thing when it
mm,
shows up? Excuse me. Is it real? Is it too good to be true? There's got to be something wrong with it. I was never allowed to have it before,
mhm.
even though I've been doing all the things to really, really want it, staying optimistic and taking the steps and re envisioning and reconfiguring. Ah, then it shows up. Hmm,
Right.
can't be real. It's never
Right.
been real before.
Mhm.
It's going to be very interesting. It's not to say that, on that day, everything just shows up for everybody, but that
Right.
feeling of like breaking through that limiting mindset of like, can I actually receive it? Can I actually identify it when it shows up?
Mm, mhm. We have to remember that Pluto is the planet of the shadow. Bless you. We have to remember that Pluto is the planet of the shadow and the deep psyche. So when Pluto is retrograde, it is our opportunity to dive deeper into the deep psyche. But here's the thing, Pluto retrograde is going to naturally present us with those limiting belief systems, with the shadow of our belief systems. It's going to do it on its own. And to your point, we have to be able to identify, um, what is this, right? Identify and discern the opportunity from an old belief system.
I keep going to sneeze. And there's like one little tickle there. Sorry. It's just like a great way to get like, hundreds of people to say bless you all at the same time is to
There you
sneeze right
go.
on
Yes,
the
we'll take it.
line.
We will take it. Uh, okay, so on July 15th, we have Mars and Taurus conjunct Uranus and Taurus. So This is an aspect that has been nearing and nearing and nearing for quite a few weeks. Um, for those who follow me, I gave you a heads up about this to keep a lookout, right? A few weeks ago. Keep a lookout, pay attention to what's coming up because a Mars-Uranus conjunction represents a liberation of something. It represents the interruption of a particular pattern, of a habit, of a belief system. And with Mars there, this isn't just something that you're going to think about. This is something that something's going to click and action will almost come immediately, either because you are presented with an opportunity to act in some way, or you're like, I can't do this. I can't stay in this space. I have to do something about this. It's important to know that this is happening in the sign of Taurus. Taurus is ruled by Venus. Venus is having so much action in so many different ways. Um, I I mean, we're having South Node eclipses in Libra ruled by Venus. We had that Venus Cazimi in Gemini just a few weeks ago. If we want to go back to that Venus retrograde in Leo, which still matters, I feel, from 2023. When Venus energy gets this much action, our values are changing, they're transforming. How we value and see ourselves is changing. What we value changes. And that determines a lot of the decisions that we make. This Mars-Uranus conjunction, I think, gives us a very clear, strong dose of clarity. And that is actually, that's actually on a Monday. So that whole week should be interesting.
Mm-hmm. So keep in mind, we had the Wheel of Fortune the day before, and we had a Wheel of Fortune on July 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
That day, we have the Nine of Pentacles.
Mm-hmm.
So when you want to talk about tangible things that are of value, that
Mm-hmm.
is exactly what this card is about. This
Mm-hmm.
is hitting that place of going, no, wait a minute, I'm in a fortunate circumstance. Everything's coming my way. I'm going to take this. I am actually going to take this and I'm going to turn it into something and I'm going to do it. And it's not to say you're not going to feel butterflies. It's not going to say you could be up all night worrying about what you're still going to do it. You're
Right.
going to do it.
Right.
And she's very happy. She's very pleased. She has the choice of all kinds of coins, all kinds of things that she could do. And part of that part of that energy is to become more self-sufficient. And it's not to say that you don't need people or that there's interdependence is not important. It
Right.
is, but it's to actually know through tangible means that you can rely on yourself. You are actually competent in certain things. You have been developing and working internally and also maybe working out there, studying, learning, reconfiguring. Stuff is beginning to show up. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, yeah, I can do this. It's not just luck and it's not just a fortunate circumstance. These are all these little pieces coming together that make me more of what I want.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. It's such an exciting thing. And sometimes the cosmos really, which I appreciate, oftentimes in hindsight, but
Mhm.
we need conjunctions like a Mars-Uranus conjunction, which is very aggressive in
Yeah.
itself, to shake us up in that way. Otherwise, we will not move. Understand that this is happening in the sign of Taurus, the fixed sign, also having to do so much with the familiar. So that in itself is a metaphor. Is we love the familiar. We love what feels safe right now. But the Mars Uranus conjunction is saying you need to be shaken up from that. And you'll be
Well,
present.
this,
What?
yeah, sorry. Yeah, the pentacles are earthy, grounded Taurus kind of energy.
Mhm.
And that that masculine Mars, if it's business related or asset related or acquisition related, small or large, mixed with Uranus, which is like a whole bunch of whatever thrown at you, it's like, well, this showed up. What do I do with it?
Right.
How do I make it into something? If I am in a fortunate circumstance, that means the things that are coming at me, as weird and bizarre as they might be or appear, they are for my greater good. So how do I take this and turn it into something?
Right. Exactly. That is a great question for July 18th, which is when the sun in Cancer actually creates a sextile to Uranus and Taurus. So this is the sun, how we show up, right? How we show up in this Cancer energy. I like to think of Sun in Cancer, one of the interpretations as I'm showing up as my own parent, as my own responsible, kind, loving, caring, unconditionally loving parent. And so from that space, what decisions am I making for myself and for my life? The sextile to Uranus and Taurus is when you show up from that space, whether you see it or not, that it is for your highest good. When you show up from that space with the genuine with genuine certainty, the sextile to Uranus and Taurus, that will be a much easier or easeful way to step into this Uranian energy that is shaking you
Mhm.
up.
Yeah, interesting.
Mhm,
So I have the Eight of Wands for that. Generally a card about communication, but I think the energy that I feel with this is more about the exchange of information and
mhm, mhm,
a point where all information converges, which could be you, could be in your head, could be in your environment, in your workspace, in your plan, in your spreadsheet. So the people that you're trying to connect with, the information that you're trying to have in order to move to the next step, in order to check all the points, the loose ends, whatever, all of this information comes to you. Now, not all of it is relevant or as relevant as other pieces of information, but it is that point where everything converges. So you have to discern as well. It's not just that everything shows up. It's not just that these fortunate things
right.
come about. You still have to um, rely on your experience and go
Mhm,
back to that. The familiar is there for a reason, and say, oh, I recognize this pattern, so that piece of information is noted, not needed, thank you. And then move on to all of the other things. But it can be somewhat of it's fortunate, and it also might feel congested as
mm,
far as what shows up all at one time.
mhm, mhm. That's a good point. Yeah, because Uranus can be a lot.
Yeah, a lot all at once. So what
A
was that
lot.
movie? Whatever, everything happening everywhere all
Right.
at once, whatever, it can be like that. Yeah,
That's such a good point because when we're talking about Cancer and your Cancer and Taurus energy, we're talking about energy that has a lot to do with the body. So Cancer can have, to do with like the stomach or the intuitive body. And when we're talking about Taurus, we're talking about the senses. Uranus and Taurus is like the nervous system. So that's a really great point because there is a lot that you can be observing, downloading, discerning, all happening at the same time, and your body will let you know.
yeah.
Yeah. So on July 20th, we have Mars and Taurus sextile Neptune and Pisces. Um, this is like chill energy. This this is I think on a greater expression on a if you just want to go with the flow and be like, you know what? Where do you want to take me? Where do you want to take me? I am in no hurry. I am trusting the guidance of the divine.
Mm.
Um, Mars and Taurus wants to move slowly. And I think that considering its conjunction to Uranus, where it's can be abrasive, the sextile to Neptune and Pisces is the reminder of coming back to that inner self, Neptune and Pisces, to that divine guidance. So that is that's truly an invitation to just ground yourself. Go, step in grass, walk on the beach, just really ground. Um, okay.
You're gonna laugh with just keep that what you said about the grass and the beach. You just
Okay.
hold that in your mind for a moment, but continue. Yes.
Okay. And then that same day, Mars moves into Gemini. So Mars just had that abrasive connection to Uranus. Let's ground. Let's come back to self with Neptune and Pisces, because once it enters Mars in Gemini, it's very social, it's very curious. It wants to try all of the things. If multiple things are coming your way, you want to say yes to all of them and you want to do all of them. It's like you want to be let out. So be very mindful of that, because Mars is in Gemini till September 4th. And that's a lot. That's a lot of energy.
Hmm. So, a grassy path, Hmm.
Right.
A
Oh,
sandy desert.
right.
Okay, we got that out of the way. Um, you tuned into that big time. The ace is the first step in something, the first step along a path to what it is that we want. Again, practical. Practical steps, the very first step. So you were saying, it's chill, it's relaxing. It is when you have the ace of pentacles, it is that opportunity that I can actually do something in a practical way. It's not a heavy card. It's very light. It's very welcome. It's like where that ace of wands is like all in inspiration and ideas and intuition. The ace of pentacles is like, ooh, something showed up, like something tangible showed up that I can go take this nice grassy pathway. Interestingly enough, these flowers that are there are called cosmos.
Oh, lovely.
Then we've got the 10 of wands. So the end. So beginning and end. 10 of wands, the releasing of burdens. We're
Yeah.
dropping, that energy goes till September. So be careful not to overburden yourself, because remember, we had that 8 of wands, all the stuff coming in, all the stuff coming in. We're venturing down a new path. You're not going to carry all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Be careful not to say yes to everything. You're going to spread yourself too thin.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also a time where you can put down this opportunity allows you to put down the burdens of the past also. So don't go and create a whole pile of new burdens over the next couple of months.
Right.
Right? It's like, oh, I just got rid of those. It's kind of like me and seeds, as you may know.
Right.
Oh, I just got rid of a whole bunch of seed packets. Now I can invest in more seeds.
Right. Exactly. As we do. That's so funny. Okay, a day later, July 21st, we have the second of two full moons in Capricorn. We have the full moon in Capricorn at 29 degrees Capricorn. For those that are not aware, the 29th degree of the zodiac of any sign is known as an anaretic degree. And what that means is that there is an accumulation of energy, which a lot of times is I can't remember I don't know what word I'm looking for, but it's like compared to when a woman is giving birth, right? There's something that is thing, right? Her
Yeah.
being pregnant and something that is coming to life, something new. So full moon in Capricorn at that 29th degree, the second one of the year, that's important. And that 29th degree of Capricorn is going to be a major player when Pluto goes retrograde there again later in the
Mhm.
year. So some of the aspects that are part of this full moon in Capricorn are Venus in Leo, sextile Jupiter in Gemini. That's a lot of excitement. That's just excitement. I want to show up for my light. What is the relationship Venus to my light, Leo? What is my relationship to love, Leo? Sextile Jupiter in Gemini. It's like bestie energy. Oh, yes, absolutely. It's like cheerleader energy. This is who you want by your side, right? Mercury and Leo square Uranus and Taurus. This full moon, because of that aspect, Mercury and Leo square Uranus and Taurus can come with some news. Mercury and Leo square Uranus, unexpected news, a little bit of drama there with the square and the Leo Be mindful of your conversations because in a lower expression, this can be just incredibly boastful and not willing to listen to the other side.
Mm.
But if we're, keeping with the energy of anything is possible, this is again, this can be good news. Um, with this full moon, the sun in Cancer is trining Neptune in Pisces. Again, we're saying this full moon illuminates what we're saying goodbye to.
Mhm.
Mars in Gemini, trine Pluto retrograde in Aquarius. We're ready. We're ready to go. We're ready to move. We're ready. We're curious. We want to know the things. So even if this isn't how you're feeling in that moment or around these days, that is whatever manifests with this full moon, and I'll go and I will extend the period of time that this full moon is active through the first week of August.
Mm.
This is the energy. This is what wants to come to you, whether you feel that or not.
Okay. Well, nice progression here. You remember we had the Ace of Wands, then the Two of Wands, now the Three of Wands.
Wow.
This is so the Ace of Wands, the having an idea, the inspiration. The Two of Wands, we could say planning to plan. Now we are actually planning. He's
Mhm,
looking over there at the horizon. The sun is shining, wearing the spiffy clothes, getting ready to take action.
mhm,
Then we have the Seven of Wands. So you talk about that maybe stubbornness of like, I want things my way.
mhm.
This is, in a good sense, holding firm, like staying true to your values, like not being thrown off. This is what I want. This is who I am. Don't don't budge. Don't budge me. This is where I am.
Right,
But there is that stubbornness as well if you go too far. So you want to remain flexible while still being true to your values, standing up for yourself. Do we have 5 aspects on that day?
we have 1, 2, 3, 4,
4. Okay.
4, and then 5 including the full moon. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So here we go. Speedy energy. Knight of Wands. You might not notice certain things. You might be whizzing past everything, or everything's whizzing past you.
Mhm.
Fun, really fun. Like, want to go to, whatever, spontaneity, road trip,
Right.
sudden invitations, whatever. Great. Again, with all the other energy there, be careful. Not a huge be careful, but just you
Right.
might have forgotten something critical at home. Now you're out of cell phone, range or something. Can't even ask for it. 10 of Swords. Nice result. She's walking away from something. So again, ones and tens, twos, were like all this beginning and ending stuff going on.
Mhm.
And also that's another 7. So loads of 7s here. Very fortunate. Thanks. This 10 walking away, it's like the maximum of anxiety and struggle and anguish and everything turning back into something positive. She's really walking away, like walking away. No, now I'm going, like, so now I'm really going. Now I can see what I was just doing before for some reason, some inclination. Now I can really now, no, now. Like that kind of realization. And then this is interesting too, because typically this card has been showing up a lot this year, like this whole, I would say, past 12 months. It is the 5 of Pentacles. The 5 of Pentacles traditionally was a poverty card.
Mm.
Lack, um not being able to see, like fives are all about changes and things in flux, other than the 5 in the major arcana. So all of the minor 5s, they're about change in flux. The 5 of Pentacles, Pentacles being tangible things like money and assets and houses and things.
Mhm.
5 not being very positive, we tend to feel like we're losing assets or we're losing money or we're not having enough of. And if you notice, she's all dressed up, she's crying. There's a door there with a big lock on it, and she can't see that there's a key over here.
Mhm.
Well, in real life, how this is going to feel at this time, it's like, I actually don't need the things. I don't
Mhm.
need the key. I don't even need to go in there. I don't even need to be dressed up. Uh, all of this new stuff happening is actually good enough for me. It's
Mhm.
like there's a satisfaction with the intangible, even though we're making progress and doing all of these things, and
Mhm.
money is showing up and opportunities are showing up. There's like a reconfiguring and a realigning with our deepest, highest values, that there's like a lot of stuff that we're just like, meh, I don't really need that. It's okay. No
Right.
thanks.
Yeah.
And it could show up in lots of different ways. It could be like, well, I don't need to eat that dessert, or I don't need that second helping. I don't need all the bells and whistles. I don't, it's not adding to my life, so therefore I actually don't need it because something's changed.
Yes. That's such a good point because one of those aspects is that Venus and Leo sextile Jupiter and Gemini. And whenever we have a connection between Venus and Jupiter, some aspects more than others, there's always an underlying tone of overindulgence. And
Yeah.
so with Venus and Leo, it's more is more is more is more is more is great, right? And Jupiter and Gemini is just agreeable. Yes, yes, absolutely. Right.
It feels good, therefore it must be good.
Right. So what when we look at it again, a higher expression or the different interpretation of Venus in connection to Jupiter, it could just be the genuine sense of joy within, right? Just a genuine sense of joy. And when you look at Venus and Leo, it's the joy in my heart agrees with yes, my brain, Gemini, is saying, yes, this is joyful and not just good enough, but there's joy.
Satiated, satiated of
Exactly.
and going like, yeah, I have
Hmm.
more than enough. I feel
Right.
better than I even need to be. Like this is like
Right.
everything is resplendent, abundant, whatever. Like
Right.
it's above and beyond instead of the lack. I'm doing with less and feeling more.
Mhm, mhm. So, right afterwards, we enter Leo season. Um, I think Leo season is always that warmth, right? That it can feel, especially in the northern hemisphere, like, oh yes, this is summer. You really feel the sun. So again, third planet, or in this case, a luminary, Sun in Leo creates an opposition to Pluto in Aquarius. Depending on the manifestations of that full moon in Capricorn, which by the way, don't have to happen on that day. They can come afterwards, but I get the feeling they'll come before because of that Mars Uranus conjunction a few days prior. There's a lot of manifestations that are going to kind of cross one another with these different energies. That Sun in Leo opposition to Pluto, depending on the manifestation, can be what do I do now? Or what are we doing now? Or what are our options? Weighing, right? An opposition, two sides of the same coin. It
Mhm.
tends to represent finding a balance. What are our options? Weighing the options. Um, if this is a confrontation with someone else and not in the best way, you want to be mindful of staying in integrity because this can really be a power struggle with someone else.
Mm.
And it just feels unnecessary, right? It feels unnecessary. Some people, depending on what's happening in their lives, they might find that, but I think that's not going to be that those are exceptions.
Right.
Um, So yeah, that's it. That's out of the three, Mercury, Venus, I think the sun is going to have that greater impact because it represents our ego. And the sun is in its home sign.
Right, right. Well, I have two. I mean, it's strange and interesting, and it reflects this energy perfectly. So, the Page of Swords, which is hummingbirds all over the place and dressed up in a red dress,
Wow.
and got the Five of Cups.
Yeah.
Again, another five, the change and the flux and everything else.
Hmm.
So, with this, okay, pages are all messengers. They're young, they're youthful energy. Swords are about information, communication, speaking, hearing, listening, whatever. The page of this is you are alerted to information from somewhere. Like, so it's an actual channel of sorts.
Hmm.
So whether that's, in a very ethereal sense, like your spirit guides or your guardian angel or somebody that's passed on communicating, all the way to, oh, I'm going to enter this phase with curiosity, with a beginner's mind of, I'm going to choose to not engage and I'm going to listen, or I'm going to ask questions instead of being confrontational.
Hmm.
So it's a youthful energy. Now, here's where things can go sideways. The Five of Cups is, so she's pulled herself out of this whirling vortex, a hole in the ground. She's looking into the hole again. You could fall back into it if you lean over too far. So it's good to look at where you've been, but it's also to back away from it as well.
Hmm.
Maybe there's like a feeling of, I lost out on something, or there's some resentment there, or something's missing as you begin to like reevaluate. And again, this could be because you're communicating with somebody and you're thinking, well, I just felt great yesterday. And now I have this like tinge of sourness or something lackluster or anticlimactic or whatever. It's go back to just keep your mouth shut for now, reflect, think, listen. It changes. It's almost like acting out when you're really hungry or hormonal, or it's not quite based in reality. And all the fives in the minor, they're all really fleeting energy.
Hmm.
They're not these major things that happen in life. So they might feel important at the moment. They might feel hurtful or like like driving force. And like really, if you wait a couple of hours, it'll dissipate. It just will cease to be an issue.
Right. Well, that makes so much sense because we have to remember the sun moves a degree a day, right? So it moves pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Um, and Mars, which is the planet of anger and aggression and how we fight, is in Gemini.
Yeah.
Like
Fleeting.
it's like
Fleeting.
it's like having an argument here and then getting distracted by the bright light and then it's forgotten about. So there is that energy of like fleeting energy.
Yeah, it's kind of like, how dare you say that to me? Oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. Did you
Yeah.
see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was I saying? I was mad at you about for what? Oh,
Right.
well, never mind. Yeah. That's
Exactly.
that's what it's like.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Okay, on July 25th, we have Mercury entering one of its home signs, which is Virgo, and remaining there till August 15th. And on that same day, we have the Sun in Leo sextile Mars in Gemini. So the way that we can take advantage of that Mercury and Virgo, and I find it a little difficult because the Sun in Leo is having a lot of fun with that Gemini energy. Um, you know, organizing things, being mindful of things, discerning things. So if we're talking about all of the stuff that's happening through the month,
Mhm.
Mercury in Virgo, I think, is going to give us the opportunity to discern what's what. Because especially if we are receiving a lot of downloads of informations, of synchronicities, of conversations, of opportunities, of, healing conversations, all the things. This Mercury in Virgo grounds us, right? And we are able to organize life internally and externally. That Sun in Leo, sextile Mars and Gemini, it's fun. Have fun, do things with people you like, keep it light, do things that light you up. Mars and Gemini, be with friends. I mean, it's great. I love that. I love that energy.
I swear we run and paint these cards up to match, but
Yeah,
we don't. We have the Three of Cups and we
right.
have the Ten of Pentacles. Look at what the people are doing in there. They're
Yes.
they're
Yes.
having fun, they're socializing, everybody's laughing, we've got like a bunch of geckos in dresses, which is, I mean,
How else?
selling insurance, I don't know, but whatever, they're having a ball. Um, the Three of Cups is about that. It can be a big party, like it can be something important, like an engagement or a marriage or a graduation or whatever those things, but it is going out and having fun, socializing, however that looks to you. That's what it's about. The clinking of glasses and the warm summer air and the birds chirping and all those things. It's very much that. Now, the Ten of Pentacles typically is about these far-reaching ideas. And again, it's a 10. Like, so you're paying attention to this, that we've got a lot of tens, including the major arcana 10 that showed up twice, right?
Right.
So the 10 of wands, the 10 of swords, and now this 10 and two wheels of fortune. Okay. Two wheel of fortunes, however. So it is the completion. So even though you may not complete this at this time, but it is the completion in the cycle of Pentacles where you've gone past the Nine of Pentacles, of that
Mm-hmm.
self-sufficiency, lots of abundance,
Mm-hmm.
to I can actually amplify this. I could amplify it. I could create a legacy. I could see how this could benefit a community, my family. It can exist after I'm gone. It has exponential ways of benefiting way beyond myself. So it is fun. So on a huge scale, it could be philanthropy. It could be, making millions of dollars or hundreds of million or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
not everybody's going to end up in that position, but it's like, how do you get to a certain level and then give, not even give back, but pay it forward?
Mm-hmm.
So that energy together of the fun and the playful and everything, it is the energy of manifesting. And it comes from a place of gratitude and joy and interacting with people and how can we make things better. And it's not in a crusade kind of way of I have to improve the world. It's not. It's just kind of like, here, we got extra whatever. Would you like these? Yeah, great. And now you have new friends. Like,
Right.
invite the neighbors over. I don't know. However that appears, it's that kind of energy of expansion.
Yes. That Sun in Leo and connection to Mars and Gemini is such a masculine energy. There's a force behind it, but it doesn't feel forceful, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think if we're working well with the Sun opposition to Pluto, that sextile to Mars and Gemini is like an empowered action, an empowered movement forward, because that is an aspect of action. So
Yeah.
it's great for that, to take action on something, to make the call, to make the connection, to make the connections, but not from a place where you're trying to control an outcome. That's important.
Well, it's, that makes me think of okay, so when we look at the Nine of Pentacles and it's all, it's not a selfish card.
Mhm,
It's just being self-sufficient, of knowing I am able to do these things and I can take care of myself. It's
mhm,
not like I can take care of myself. It's not that energy. It's
right.
like, oh, I'm actually able to connect all the dots and have and do. Okay. And when you move to the 10, it is that, oh, I have an extra. I don't need to actually benefit from this. Or somebody comes to you and say, you know what, we've got an extra 6 boxes of flooring tile we don't know what to do with. Do you want them? And
Mhm,
you go, no, I don't want them. But those people would like them. And so you're not technically benefiting, but there's so much more that you can actually now connect these two things together so that they benefit. And
mhm,
you benefit in a way because you've done something good for this connection
mhm,
outside of yourself.
mhm. I love that. I love that. Finally, we end the month on July 27th with Chiron moving retrograde in Aries till December 29th. So, a Chiron retrograde is very similar to a Neptune retrograde. You don't really feel it. A Saturn retrograde can actually change fundamental things in your life, right? Uh, Pluto, maybe, depends on what it hits in your chart. But that Chiron energy is an integration that's happening simply by just living life, right? And you'll notice, this is what I notice like with Neptune retrogrades, Chiron retrogrades, Pluto retrogrades have been different for me because they've been on my sun for like 4 years now. But this is getting to, like, December of 20 not January 2025 and saying, "Oh, that's how I integrated that rage," or, "I no longer feel it in that way." A lot of this Chiron retrograde in Aries has to do with what happened around April.
Mhm.
That solar eclipse in Aries of April 8th, that Mercury retrograde in Aries of pretty much the entire month. Chiron played a major role because it was hit by the sun. It was hit by Mars. It was hit by the North Node. And so Chiron in Aries represents the wound that comes when you choose yourself. So the wound can be, I'm afraid of choosing myself, or when I do choose myself, this is the backlash that I receive. Um, so therefore, it does take courage to choose yourself in that way. And I think that we are going to, during the retrograde, really land on what that means, because
Mhm.
it can also err on the side of selfishness, right? And selfishness isn't always bad, but when it goes unchecked,
Yeah.
there can also be like a self-centeredness to that. So it's going to be different for everyone, obviously, but it'll be an interesting thing to look back on.
Yeah. Well, prepare to have your mind blown on this blown. What was the very first card I spoke about? The Fool, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Entering into this, taking a leap of faith, getting ready to take the plunge. That's in the Light Seers deck. In the Curious Creatures deck, there's actually one additional card to the deck. There is the Fool, a 0, and then it goes all the way to the World. And then you see how
Oh,
far, right? There is the Fool 2.0.
stop. Stop.
2.0.
Stop.
So we talked about going through a portal, beginnings and endings, all the way through step 1, step 2, step 3.
That's so
Go back. Step 1, step 2, step 3. 777. Good luck. Tens, tens. End. And now we end up with the Fool 2.0. It's not even the original Fool. So that 2.0 of
yes.
really coming through this cycle, like we're really going through Oh, I thought this, I did that. Okay, whatever. Check all the boxes, do all the things, read all the things, self-assess. Okay, boom, boom, boom. Feel the feelings. Oh, epiphany. Oh, whatever. And then you come right back and you end up with, I'm gonna take another plunge. I just did all that. I'm gonna hit another portal. And you even said right at the beginning, portal to portal, not even just going through a portal, but it was like portal to portal.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was just like giggling inside. She doesn't even know.
I didn't.
I know.
I'm over here like, this is so exciting.
And so
Wow.
here the if I had it really handy in this deck, it's a little puppy at the beginning. And so when it's just the full zero, it's a little puppy diving in. But
Wow.
now it's the dog head with the human body and the little red feather. And it's quite happy to jump in. It's not fearful at all. It's like, I know how to do this. The little red feather is life force.
Mhm.
You know, I can do this. Like the first time you ever went diving, I don't know. I remember it. I was really scared and I went in, and went off the diving board. And then you do it once, you know, fix your bathing suit. You're like, "Oh, I can do that again," and then it's like, boom, and then you're like, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna try it this way." It's that feeling of like, I know how to take the plunge. I know how to do it. Let me try it again. I'm gonna level up. I'm gonna keep leveling up. So
Right.
yeah, I thought that was kind of cool.
That blew my mind for sure.
Yeah, there you go. Nothing left to say.
And that's it.
That's it. That's
I mean,
July for you.
what a great month. I mean, I think it is. I think it is. I think we get to allow ourselves to come from that place, to come from that higher guidance, that higher wisdom. Um, Surrender to it. Allow yourself to be it. Allow yourself to have it. Because I mean, look, we focus a lot on personal astrology,
Yeah,
collective astrology. These aspects are crazy.
yeah.
And the collective worldly outlook, especially for the next 6 to 9 months, is not great. And
No.
what I have realized in all of this is the more bizarre that looks, the more inward I have to go,
Hmm.
right? That's where the change happens. But we have to tap into that within ourselves. We have to know that that exists within us, accept it as a truth, tap into it, create from there, because it's not just about the creating and the manifestation. That's great. I think it's also about recognizing who we truly are, and that light is powerful in other ways.
And what can we control?
Right.
What can
Right.
we control? It is absolutely bonkers out there
Mhm.
right now. So what are you going to do? I mean, there's and this might be something if people want to comment in the
Mhm.
comment section.
Mhm.
It may be interesting to do for Millie and I to do a more of a collective Astro-Tarot forecast for 6 months, 9 months, a year, whatever, just sort of talk about certain things that are coming up, maybe in a more predictive sort of fashion too, might be interesting. But when you look at what's happening out there, it's it is bonkers and it's become normalized because it's been incrementally pushing, 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 pushing. And there's that point where I think we're at the tipping point where more and more people are going, no, I am not participating in this gong show. What can I control? Me. I can control me. And so again, that, self-sufficiency, uh, my own thoughts, my own feelings, my own curiosity, where I'm going to vote with my money, not vote on a ballot. Like
Right.
I'm going to make changes. I'm not going to do this or do that. It's like all the things to make you feel better, which I think are a deviation from the things we've been programmed to do up
Mm,
until this point.
mhm, mhm. Absolutely, absolutely. Remember, Pluto and Aquarius, the upgrade in the technology of the mind. That is true. So
Yeah.
thank you all so much for joining us. We hope you enjoy this. Let us know what you think in the comments, and we will see you next month.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.